Hey, welcome back. So in this video, I'm going to talk about Bun. Now, if you haven't heard of Bun before, then I'm not surprised because it's pretty new. But then I am surprised because Bun has so much hype surrounding it. It's unbelievable. It is being built as the node killer, the deno killer. It is the brand new JavaScript runtime that we're all going to flock to, and it's what we're going to be using forevermore. And to be honest, that hype is understandable because it is fast. It is super fast. So in this video, we are going to deep dive Bun a little bit, and we're going to look at why it's so fast and why it's outstripping engines such as node.js and Deno. So, first things first, what actually is Bun? Well, if we look at the Bun website for a second, it gives a really good description of what it is, which is Bun is a fast, all-in-one JavaScript runtime. And I think those words are really important in the description of Bun. So, at the heart of it is a JavaScript runtime. So, what they mean by that is they think of themselves like a Node.js or a Deno. So in the future, you would no longer need a Node.js, you would no longer need a Deno, you would just use Bun to serve up things like your React applications or serve up your backend APIs. So why would you use something like Bun over Node.js or Deno? And the answer is simple. It is fast. It is blindingly fast. It is as fast as running a Rust web server. It's faster than Rocket. It's just as fast as something like Salvo. It's just as fast as actix-web. It is fast, fast, fast. And I'm going to show you that in a second. So if you were looking to build an API server, or if you were looking to do server-side rendering or serve up your React application, for example, then Bun would be an ideal candidate for that. And that's because they put performance at the heart of everything that they've done. They've even got rid of Google V8 JavaScript engine, and they're using JavaScript Core, which powers Safari, as a replacement because it's faster and it's more appropriate for Edge. But that's not the only thing that makes Bun really exciting. So the other part is this all-in-one piece that they're talking about as well. So it's not just a JavaScript runtime. It has also got things like package management. So the idea is you wouldn't need NPM anymore, or NPM client or Yarn. You would use Bun instead. And again, same reason, because Bun is super fast. So if you want to install your packages, etc., it's just going to run blindingly fast. It runs a lot faster than Yarn or NPM. Next capability that it has as well is things like transpilation. So it's got native capabilities to transpile TypeScript into JavaScript. And that is super important because you don't need frameworks like Babel. You don't need frameworks like ESBuild. You would be able to just use Bun. And then they extend into that even further, which is using it for bundling capabilities. So you could replace ESBuild, you could get rid of things like Webpack, and again, you would just be able to use Bun. Now, not all of these features are there at the moment. Some of these are roadmap, but that is their intention, that Bun would become your all-in tool. And then finally, task runners as well, so you wouldn't need things like Jest. So finally, before we get Bun installed and have a look underneath the hood, why is Bun creating such a hype, and why has that not happened with Deno? Because I think Bun is focused on two things more than anything. One is the performance element, so it's finally at a speed that is comparable to Rust, and Deno hasn't done that at all. Deno has the capability to do that, and we'll cover that a little bit later in this video, but it hasn't done that today. And I think that's somewhere where Deno will fight back, and I'll talk about that in a second. And then secondly, it is focused on compatibility. So we talked about things like NPM, we talked about things like Node.js. Well, one of the key things that Bun is doing is they're having compatibility with the Node APIs, i.e. NAPI. So as time goes by, all of your existing Node applications will work with Bun. Right now, they've not implemented absolutely everything just now, and again, I'll show you that later on, but they have implemented a lot of them. They say around 90%. So that is important. Deno hasn't taken that approach, and that is a problem because it's really hard to pick up and adopt a new framework, whereas Bun is looking at compatibility across the board. And again, when you look at things like the package management clients, you could pick up Bun today and start running with that over NPM or Yarn, and it would be faster, and you could use that today. So again, that approach that they're taking with compatibility is really interesting and different, and I think that is a differentiator that they have along with this performance. Anyway, do I ultimately think that Bun is going to replace Node.js or Deno? No, I don't think it will, right? I mean, I hope it will. It'd be fantastic if it could, and I love the approach that they're taking. But ultimately, if I was someone like Deno, then I would fight back. And again, I'm going to show you how I would fight back if I was someone like a Deno as we go along. Anyway, with all that being said, what we're going to do now is get it installed, and you're going to be blown away by how fast some of this is. Okay, so first things first, what we need to do is install Bun into our machine. So what I'm going to do is, you can see the command is already up on the Bun website, so you can just copy that and then open up a terminal. So we'll just open up my hyper terminal for a second. Let's just clear this, and then we'll get that installed. Okay, so now that's installed, you should be able to go bun -- version, and you should see that Bun is installed. And you can see I've got 0.14 installed there. So if you have any problems with the installation of Bun, maybe when typing Bun it doesn't work there, then one of the things you have to do is make sure that the install directory and the path is in your bash profile, especially if you're on a Mac, right? So if we just scroll down to the bottom here for a second, you will see there's two lines here. So first one is export bun_install, and you can see it's my home directory and it's pointing to .bun. And then similarly, I've done an export of my path and just added that bun install directory into my path. So that's really the only thing you need to do, is make sure that bun installation directory is in your path. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a brand new Bun web server just to show you how blindingly fast Bun is. And then what we will do is compare that to the speed of something like actix-web and node.js and even Deno. Okay, so first thing is we'll just create a new directory. So we'll call this bun hello. And then let's just cd into that. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create it as a TypeScript server, just so that you can kind of see this inbuilt transpilation. So we'll do a touch server.ts, and then we'll just open that up in Visual Studio Code. Okay, so to create a server is pretty simple. All we need to do is export default, and then I'm going to set the port to 3000, and we are going to use the fetch command. And then literally all I need to do is return a new response that says hello world, and that is all we need to do to create a web server. So if I just return back to my terminal for a second, if I want to start my server, I just need to type in bun_server.ts. And that is my server up and running. And if I wanted to, I can open up Brave for a second, and I can just go to localhost 3000, and you can see it's coming back with hello world. So it's all working fine. And now this is the absolute cool part. So if I want to performance test this, all I need to do is use the WRK tools. So you can just download that if you haven't got it installed in your machine already. We are going to set it to 8 threads with 256 concurrent connections. We're going to run the test for 30 seconds, and then we're going to hit our localhost on port 3000, and then that's going to tell us how fast it's going to run. And by the way, this is the exact same command that I use to test things like Rocket or Node.js, etc. And we're going to test them all in a second and just see how the performance compares. But after about 30 seconds, we should get a response on how fast this actually is. Alrighty, so it's coming back with the response, and as you can see, it's running at around 244,000 requests per second. That is blindingly fast, blindingly fast. As I said, that is faster than Rocket, it's faster than Node.js, it's faster than Fastify, it's faster than pretty much all of the JavaScript engines, apart from something like Just.js, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And it's up there with the performance of Rust and Go-based servers. Okay, now you could get this running a little bit faster, and I'm going to show you this in a second. So you see this is 244,000 requests per second. Let me just change this. So if I just move this from being server.ts to server.js, and we'll just run our server again. So we'll run server.js this time, and it's back up and running. So if I just do a localhost 3000, you can see it's still working. But now if I run that test one more time, remember the previous test ran at 244,000 requests per second. Let's just see how it compares when we're running JavaScript versus TypeScript. So as you can see, when we're running this as JavaScript rather than TypeScript, is running at around 245,000 requests per second. So as you can see there's not a lot of difference between using JavaScript or TypeScript as an extension. So you're not paying a massive penalty for that TypeScript transpilation. Now, of course, you'll be paying a little bit first time that it has to do that transpile on the fly, but it's minuscule. And at the speed we're talking about there, it's really not kind of worth thinking about. So if you want to use TypeScript, use TypeScript. If you want to use JavaScript, use JavaScript. But I think the key thing here, and this is one of the things that I really prefer over a kind of node.js type ecosystem, is that I can just use TypeScript. I don't need to use something like ESBuild or ESBuild register, etc. to do the on-the-fly transpilation. I can just write TypeScript files naturally. So I think that's really cool. And again, you're not seeing too much of a performance hit for the difference. In fact, it's negligible. Now, I said, how does this compare to something like Rust or Rocket? So let's find that out. So what we will do is we will use the same tests as I used in a previous video. You can see I've pre-built a whole set of servers that you can sort of test the performance on. And again, that is sort of covered in my Actix versus Rocket video. So the first one we will do is we'll just use Actix. It's a super fast Rust framework. And let's just see how that actually compares. So we will just do a cargo run -- release. So we'll just open up a new tab and I'll go to localhost 8080. And you can see my application's up and running. It says hello world as the other one does. And now if we run the exact same test as we did before, but this time we'll go to 8080, and this is going to run against actix-web, and we can compare the performance between Bun and actix-web. There we go. And as you can see there, the actix-web, which is purely written in Rust and is one of the fastest frameworks known, is running on my machine at 254,000 requests per second. So it's maybe 10,000 requests per second faster than Bun, but it's not massively faster. Now, where it gets really interesting is if I then compare this to something like Rocket. So let's go to Rocket, which is another Rust web server. So we'll just do a cargo run -- release in this case. Okay, so as you can see, Rocket's now up and running. If I click on here, you can see it's coming back with hello world. Let's just compare the performance with Rocket. So we'll just run our same test as we did before. Again, it'll take another 30 seconds or so. But what you should see in this case is Bun is going to run a ton faster than Rocket does. And there we go. As you can see, Rocket is running at 165,000 requests per second. So Bun is smoking a Rust framework, which I think is really interesting. Now, if I wanted to be really unfair, let's compare it to node.js and compare it to Deno for a second. Let's go to Express first, right? Because that's usually the standard that we tend to run at in JavaScript world. So we'll just do a node server.js, and you can see that's running on 8080 as well. So if I just click here, you can see I've got my hello world coming back. And now if I just run the same test as we did before, again, it'll take another 30 seconds or so. And then what you should see is Express will be running at around 15,000 requests per second. There we go. Express just came back. Okay, Express ran a little bit faster than I was expecting there. It was running at around 22,000 requests per second. But key thing is that Bun is running 10 times faster, more than 10 times faster than Express is, right? So it is a blindingly fast server, right? And then so I can sort of understand this, right? So let's just take this for a second, right? Express runs at 22,000 requests per second, but then Rust frameworks are running at 250,000 requests per second. You can understand why JavaScript programmers, TypeScript programmers are frustrated, right? Because the web server frameworks that we have run blindingly slow compared to the Rust frameworks, right? And this is why people are getting excited about Bun, because we have a genuinely faster web server alternative alternative that's coming. Now, it's not production ready, right? In certain cases, the runtime is definitely not production ready. It's in beta at the moment, but you can see the promise, and this is why people are getting excited. Now, why isn't that excitement there for something like Deno? Well, let me just show you that for a second. So we'll come back for a second. We will this time go into a pre-built Deno example. So if I just bring that up for a second, you can kind of see it's not massively different, right? You've got the import serve from server TS. It's returning this hello world response, and it's doing it on, in this case, port 8000, but it's a tiny server, right? So if we just do a deno run --allow -net server.ts, that will get our deno server up and running. As you can see, it works on port 8000 at the moment, so that's good. And then if we run the exact same test that we ran earlier, we'll set the port to 8000 instead, and then we can see how fast Deno runs. And there, as you can see, Deno is running at 100,000 requests per second. Now, don't get me wrong, that's kind of exciting. It's still sort of 5 times faster than Express. It's still faster than something like Fastify. It's faster than Node.js, but it's not as fast as the Rust frameworks, and it's certainly not as fast as Bun is, right? So you can go, okay, well, 100,000 requests per second is respectable, but it's nothing to get excited about, right? If you think of actix-web running at sort of 250,000 requests per second, that is exciting, but it's just running at 100,000 requests per second, right? So you can understand why folks don't get excited about Deno and why folks are getting super excited about Bun, because here is a promise to have a web server that runs as fast as a Rust framework. Now, Deno, in some regards, has no excuse, right? Because actually, if you look underneath the hood of how Deno is built, then sure, Deno is using the V8 engine for JavaScript, and we'll talk about that in a second, whereas Bun uses JavaScript core. But actually, in this example, we're not doing anything with JavaScript. I'm just returning hello world, right? It's really light what we're doing there. It's very tiny. So it should be able to run a bit faster. And in fact, if you look at actix-web, Deno and actix-web are built on the same technologies, right? And I think that is a critical thing for everybody to understand. So if I look at actix-web, underneath the hood, a Rust technology, so it's built on Rust. It's using the Rust technology called Tokio, and I have a video on Tokio on how that works, to handle all the asynchronous TCP streams. So Deno is built on top of that layer. It's not reinventing that layer. It's just using the exact same streams the Tokio and actix-web uses. So technically, Deno should be fast and productionized at a TCP stream layer. Now, sitting on top of that as well, it's using Hyper as its HTTP client. Now, actix-web is doing some interesting things underneath the hood there, but Salvo is another one, and I have a video on Salvo, go check that out, which runs at the same speed as actix-web, and Salvo is able to run at 260,000 requests per second, and it uses Hyper as well. So all of the HTTP handling, parsing, etc. is handled by the Hyper layer, which is exactly the same for Deno. So technically, if you think about it, Deno should be capable of running 260,000 requests per second for just handling small, non-complex applications where it's just serving up some data. But it's not. It's running at 100,000 requests per second. So I think Deno has the absolute capability to be running at that same speed. So back to my point of what would I do if I was Deno? I would go back and actually look at the underlying layers, and we may do this in a second, right? But I would go look at the underlying layers and see why I'm being slowed down, because 106,000 requests per second is respectable, but it's not going to get people excited. So that's the first thing, Deno, right? I love what you're doing, Deno, but I think that's something that you could look at, is how to get that same speed. And that's where a difference in the principle of what the Bun team did, what Jared Sumner is doing, versus what the Deno team is doing. Deno is focusing on building this great framework, but they haven't put a focus on performance. But actually, just by focusing on performance, they could get to those same levels. And I know people are going, wow, Bun is using JavaScript core. It's not using the V8 engine. So, there's no way that it can run as fast. That is not true. That is not true. And I'm going to prove that in a second. So Deno team, this is the first thing I would do is go back into your framework and actually start performance improving that, because I think you could easily get that up from 105,000 requests per second, and you could be running in the sort of 240,000 requests per second in the same manner as Bun is doing, and that would be something I would do. I think you also need to look at the Node API compatibility. I think that's a key thing. Now, why am I saying that's important? I'm saying that's important because there is an advantage that Deno has over Bun. And that advantage is that Deno is built on top of existing frameworks. I just said this, right? It's built in Rust, it's using Tokio, it's using Hyper, so all its TCP streams, all of its HTTP parsing technologies is all on pre-built productionized libraries. Not only that, things like JavaScript serialization is using CERD, again, which is a productionized JSON serialization library. So the serialization libraries it's using is productionized. Whereas if we look at something like Bun, actually everything is built ground up from the start in a language called Zig. So it hasn't been production tested. All right, they're doing performance testing, but it's beta. So there starts to become a question, and this is an important question, right? Is would I take my application that I'm going to put into production, that I run my business under, and am I going to run it on a brand new piece of code? Thinking about this from a security perspective, from a bug perspective, and the answer is probably not, because it's not mature enough. So Deno team, you have time, right? Because you're built on top of production frameworks, right? You're a production framework yourself. That is something that you would be able to fix fairly quickly. So again, that's something I would recommend that you do. And this is why I'm saying I'm not sure that, although I love the Bun philosophy and I love everything that they're doing, I think, and they are and I love this, they are challenging the JavaScript ecosystem to be on par with everybody else. Love it. But I think if Deno played their cards right, then that's something that they would be able to do to be competitive. And again, even like the Node.js teams, you would be able to do the same as well. So anyway, that's my piece on this, but absolutely love what Bun is doing.